Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. As you do not know, we were having a little bit of some technical difficulties, maybe kind of like how NASCAR probably feels at headquarters right now after today's breaking news. But welcome to Stuck in the Catch Fence. My name's Ryan Peters. I am your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Joe Spillman. Joe, how are you?
Well, I'm doing excellent, Ryan. I'm usually always doing excellent though when I get to sit down and talk some NASCAR with you.
It's been a great week so far, at least on my side. Work was a little rough today, but I got a new computer, so I you can see my shirt now. I look whiter, which is probably not a great thing. I don't know. I mean,
By
obviously,
wider, you mean a wider angle. You don't look wider as a
I
person,
mean, I
really.
mean, I mean, I mean both. I don't look taller. I will say that. I was hoping to
Yeah,
look
yeah,
taller. I don't know how, but I was really like, okay, if I can look like 7 foot, is that asking a lot?
yeah. You're never gonna look 7 foot.
You know what I saw today, Joe? Just a quick
What?
story. You're probably pretty familiar. Gas stations, they put those things like that measure height when you
Right.
walk out the door. And I'm like, why is 5.5 feet so tall?
I don't
I
know.
was
Yeah,
I was just like I was
it
like,
is.
man, that is up there
Do you know why they put those there?
for perks, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the camera can get how tall you are when after you rob the place.
It just pisses me off because I keep looking up at five and a
Right.
half feet. So
You
I don't
you
know.
were you were finally. I do know that you went to Kings Island recently, and they finally let you on the beast. So at least you made it to that point.
Yeah, yeah, that was a good. Finally got off the teacups, and screw all those other kids that keep cutting in front of me. But
Right.
no, we have a great show today, Joe. We're live streaming because we were expecting some big news today, and well, it did not disappoint. Some of us
Yeah.
are excited about it. I think you, being the resident Kyle Larson fan, at least has to be excited for where he now ranks in the standings. I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel about the appeal in general, but at least now he goes from in the 30s to ninth place in the point standings. So that is quite the difference. But we will go ahead and jump right into it. So again, thank you for joining us here on Stuck in the Catfish. This is the weekly show. Today's news, as we were all waiting for an appeal that's never been won so far since NASCAR decided to go to a third party. Brad Keselowski could not win it. Front Row Motorsports could not win it. Anybody else that has been a part of the new appeals process with the next gen car cannot win it. But Rick Hendrick today, in his magic and pocketbook, was able to find a way to win half of the appeal. And now let me say this one last time. This appeal was not by NASCAR. It was by a separate body of three people who came down with the decision that the suspension for the crew chiefs, which Hendrick himself implemented for 4 races, and the $100,000 for each team was upheld. So that will not change. But what all NASCAR fans were waiting to see is the points in all 100 owners' points, 100 drivers' points, and 10 playoff points were reinstated. It completely flips the NASCAR standings on its head. And Joe, I will show you exactly what that looks like right now so that you can see. As you can now tell, I know my friend Zach, aka the doggo. Is it something the doggo, Joe? Oh,
Yeah. Something like
let go
that.
the doggo. Don't shoot my doggo. I don't know. Bowman now back on top when it comes to the driver standings. William Byron goes to third. Kyle Larson goes to ninth. And obviously, Chase Elliott being hurt is not on there. But if you look at the playoff rankings right now, William Byron goes all the way back to the top. My driver, Kyle Busch, goes down to fourth. And Roush Chastain now goes to third place. But Joe, looking at the standings and now overall looking at the bigger picture, what is your opening thoughts based upon the ruling by the appeals board on this huge suspension for Rick Hendrick Racing?
Yeah. So my understanding, right? You just kind of explained it. I I think that we sat on the show and we actually said, hey, if the drivers didn't have anything to do with this, why are they being punished? And I think really that's what this appeal kind of tells me is the after reviewing the facts, the panel, the appeals panel sat down and said, this was purely, a management decision to do what they did. The drivers weren't really involved with this. They just go out and they run races. So, being a Hendrick fan, being a Kyle Larson fan, I like the fact that they all got their points back. What I don't like is, I think with any ruling, you have to have consistency. And whether or not we all thought that the modifying of the louvers so they fit right or whatever the case may be was something that Hendrick felt that they had to do. At the end of the day, they still did something that they weren't supposed to do. And I think that this is not consistent with the other penalties that we've seen, even on Brad Keselowski last year. So I would say that the fairness of it really isn't up to what I would like to see. I mean, you're either going to have a standard or you're not, and it's not going to be, hey, you're a competitive team, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of fans, so we're going to make an exception for you. But this team right here can do the same thing, and we're going to give them the death penalty. So I know it's still going to cost Hendrick money. Their crew chiefs are still suspended, which, I mean, really big deal. The only penalty that comes out of this is the $400 million that they're going to have to pay. I think
400,000.
400,000.
Little.
What I say? Did I say million?
Yeah.
That would be
NASCAR may be hurting due to ratings because Chase is not there, but Rick Hendrick just went. Ah!
I meant 400,000. 400. See, I'm thinking like our government. Like 400 million to our government's nothing. I mean, they'll spend 400 million of your money without dollars without even thinking about it. So,
right.
But yeah, 400,000. I mean, that's he's going to write that check, and they're going to be done with this pretty quickly, I think.
I want to get to the statement by NASCAR and what they put out on their social media page. So I will bring that up. NASCAR, we are pleased that the National Motorsports Appeals Panel agreed that Hendrick Motorsports violated the rule book. However, we are disappointed that the entirety of the penalty was not upheld. A points penalty is a strong deterrent that is necessary to govern the garage following the rulebook violations, and we believe that it was an important part of the penalty in this case and moving forward. We will continue to inspect and officiate the NASCAR garage at the highest level of scrutiny to ensure fair and level playing field with our fans and the entire garage. And I think that is what most people are going to look at, Joe, is the fans and the entire garage. This was not positive news. And what in today's day and age, as you know, and we're here to also bring you the news as well, NASCAR fans are not fully educated on the appeals process. So when it comes out that Rick Hendrick and his team get off scot-free, at least from a points penalty standpoint, Joe, the media backlash on social media, Facebook, Twitter is, there he goes, Rick Hendrick paying everybody off, opened up the pocketbooks, got rid of everything. And I felt like NASCAR had to make this statement because now we know, and well, we as in the common know, not just, stuck in the catch fence knew this, but that this is not up to NASCAR. That being said, we also talked about what were the ramifications if this penalty was declined. And I am on the fence of saying, I don't care about the money. I don't think the fans care about the money. We know how deep the pocketbook for Rick Hendrick is. They care about the points. And Joe, we've seen Josh Williams get fined and suspended a race for parking. We've seen Brad Keselowski just now starting out at Roush Fenway, making an alteration to his vehicle and have these points penalties hand up Front Row Motorsports. But when the big dog Rick Hendrick has something come to his playing field and they say, hey, you did something wrong, and they're still admitting that he did something wrong. And that's the part of that maybe makes me more frustrated than anything, that they did do something wrong, but only rescinded half of it. How do you think the garage takes that?
Well, I mean, they're going to take it exactly what you just said, but here's my thought. And I think that to be fair and to kind of look at this from all angles, how good was NASCAR's case? I mean, I know they're saying you did something wrong, but indeed, I think, when we talk about Brad Keselowski, the argument Brad Keselowski was trying to, from what I understand, alter his spoiler, to make his car have more downforce or whatever. He was trying to alter a single source part that he absolutely knew he couldn't touch. It was already in specifications. I understand that. The argument here, and I think what everybody needs to understand, is Hendrick all along said, look, we had to do this. They weren't in the specifications that you gave us for our car. We put them in the specifications for our car. That's the alteration we made to these louvers. We didn't do anything to give our cars an advantage. We just made them fit our car like you told us they had to fit our car, because they didn't come to us like that. And I think if that is indeed the case, and it looks like it may be, I think this is a ruling where it says, look, they're guilty of altering a single source part, which you cannot do, but there's a mitigating factor here. And I think that that's what we have to look at, to be fair. But I understand the perception that you're saying when, you look and this is Rick Hendrick and Hendrick Motorsports, and it looks like their drivers at least are being given a free pass. So the optics of this is horrible on the sport, and it's horrible to the fans, especially if you're a Keselowski or a Harvick fan or a Kyle Busch fan, and you don't give a dang about Hendrick Motorsports. You're sitting here saying exactly what you said. Well, it's Hendrick, so he's going to get away with murder essentially in this sport. I mean, they gave Keselowski the death penalty for altering a single source part last year. Pretty much had no chance of making the playoffs at all. This year, the penalty wasn't even that bad, because all the drivers had to do was win to get into the playoffs, because points essentially don't matter unless there's 16 different winners. So, at the end of the day, I really can't tell you how this decision really, I'm really split in half on this. I would like for it to be as consistent as it was with Keselowski, but also if there is a mitigating factor in there, which it sounds like that there is just by the ruling of this, I think you got to understand that too, and kind of take it with a grain of salt, if that makes sense.
I understand where you're coming from, but I look at it as what NASCAR would, as trying to be black and white. Do not alter single source part. Okay. And NASCAR, as we know, at least according to Denny Hamlin, sent out that memo that said, do not alter this. We know that it's not up to specs, but please do not alter this. We are trying to get this fixed. So we know that, at least based upon Denny Hamlin. And to be fair, Denny Hamlin hasn't stirred us wrong yet when it comes to information about what we know. That being said, Joe, this is how I look at things. I would have rather the appeals panel, with what you're saying, go, they did nothing wrong. You gave them a faulty part. They altered it so that it could be up to competitive advantage, just like anybody else, because they were at a competitive disadvantage. And for that reason, because your job is to supply them now, because they're not able to do their own fabrication of parts, you did not meet the standard of competitiveness for Chevy. Or you altered a part. So we're withholding everything that was dropped down upon you. These are the penalties for doing that. We understand the process and the thought that went into it. But at the end of the day, you were told not to alter it. Don't do it. But what did the appeals panel do? They split it in half. And I hate that, because that leaves this type of criticism, this type of treatment to now, if Colleague Racing does not win their appeal, and the whole process about that, they may have 3 other people do their appeal, and they get the same penalty. Joe, all hell's going to break loose in terms of when it comes to the fandom not thinking this is a WWE style sanctioning body and organization for NASCAR.
I 100% agree. And I'm not going to disagree with you with the all or nothing approach on these penalties. Either you did something wrong or you didn't. And I do agree with that. And that's a great way to handle any sort of penalty in any sport. You either use steroids in baseball or you didn't. It's black and white. You either altered the single source product or you didn't. No matter what your justification was, if it's clearly against the rules, then it's clearly against the rules. And I cannot disagree with your approach on that. The only thing that I will say is at the end of the day, when you kind of look at everything that encompasses this penalty, and you look at people who did similar or the same things, like a Brad Keselowski. When you talk about drivers, indeed, if the drivers don't know what's going on and they are not intentionally cheating, I don't understand taking away drivers' points unless it is a driver's infraction, if that makes sense. So
I understand that, Joe, but why were the crew chiefs suspended if these came right off the hauler like NASCAR said?
I don't disagree.
I completely agree with you. The only reason I think that the drivers' points are suspended is because that's the more important penalty. And I understand that thought process, especially for a car that did not go on the track. We can't emphasize that enough. Never made it to the track. But at the same time, it wasn't the crew chiefs that put that car on the hauler. They're seeing that car for the first time, just like anybody else.
Cody Turner just said Houston Astros 2017 champs. So,
Joe, can you filter out spam and bots?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
But I think at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. And is that something that played into this decision as well by the appeals panel of saying, hey, yeah, they caught this, but these cars never made it to the track? I know if you attempt to commit a crime and you take a substantial, in the criminal world, you take a substantial step to commit that crime, but you're stopped before you're successful, you still get charged with the same crime, essentially, right? You get charged with you attempted to commit that crime. So really, even though at the end of the day, these cars didn't make it on the track, if the intention was to run these cars that have been altered, it's still the same crime, in my opinion.
I agree.
So
let me ask you this then. Okay. Thinking for all of our listeners right now, do you now think with this appeal and this panel coming down with this decision that owners now more than ever are going to try to find what is that gray area? Because we now have had Scotch tape cost you a win, and then this is way more. I would say that this penalty is a lot more than adding Scotch tape, trying to alter an entire part. But we've seen the precedent from NASCAR. They've been very, very strict. Now that Hendrick Motorsports gets away with this, do you think that the garages now pay more attention to this and try to see if they can finagle their way based upon what was possibly worded in that appeals process? Or do you think more than anything, they're all upset and said, Rick Hendrick, Chad Canals, and everybody else involved just got away with another one?
Well, I think you've got to take, just like anything, I think you have to take each penalty on an individual basis. And the argument that is made to substantiate or mitigate the factors that we have. So, what I'm saying is, what did Hendrick argue? And we know what they argued. They argued that these weren't in specifications. We were trying to make them right. Brad Keselowski did not have an argument for what he did. It was like, yeah, we knew that this was bad. We're hoping we didn't get caught. So I think you have to really look at everything that encompasses each individual penalty. And I think if somebody is acting, if Hendrick Motorsports was indeed acting in good faith when they did this, thinking that they were doing the right thing, I can understand this, but I can't get away from, like you said, the all or nothing. You either broke the rules or you didn't. And that's what I really am torn on this decision. I'm torn because I'm a fan. And as a fan of Hendrick Motorsports and Kyle Larson, I'm glad he gets his points back. But I'm also torn because I'm a fan of NASCAR and I want to see everybody with basically have the same treatment. And I could see this even as a Kyle Larson fan. I could sit here and say or see how fans of other teams are going, well, wait a minute. I mean, if you're the 1 to 2 Keselowski fans out there and you happen to be watching this, I mean, I would think that those 2 or 3 people are infuriated right now. I can't
spit out their Hawaiian rolls,
right.
Joe. You just pissed them.
Yeah, I mean they have to be very upset at this.
Let me ask you this. Hypothetically, what if, because you mentioned that they never made it to the track, what if the appeals panel, with their almighty knowledge and their almighty power now, said, we thought this was a competitive penalty, these L2 penalties, but since this never made it to the track, knowing what we know about this penalty happening for a part that we knew NASCAR, it wasn't NASCAR. The source of this part was having difficulties coming to specs. But you did alter it. What if they just cut the entire penalty in half? Half the fine, the crew chiefs get to come back because they served half the time, and the owners, drivers, and playoff points were all cut in half. What if they took an all-out approach that way? Would you consider that being fair, or is it still no, you committed the crime, you pay the L2 penalty because it's black and white by NASCAR?
I think that's really going to be how you view this. I think that's essentially the same thing, but you're just cutting the money in half. I think that's essentially what they did.
I think the driver's points being rescinded is way worse.
Well, okay. I think from a team's perspective, I guess, I really think, and I'm so torn on this, and this is why I'm kind of, because I don't disagree with you, but I think even in that outcome, right? Even if you just say, okay, we think you were half wrong in this, so we're gonna cut the penalty in half. I think we're still sitting here having the same conversation, and I think you're still torn, because at the end of the day, what is your approach? Are there mitigating factors? And those arguments were listened to, and the appeals panel said, hey, you know what? We're going to give you back the driver's points, but the management here at Hendrick Motorsports still did the wrong thing by altering those louvers. So you're still going to have to pay the fine, and crew chiefs are still out. Or are you a fan of going, hey, no, you committed the crime, you do the time, and that's it, black and white. And it's really, no matter how you try to justify this penalty alone, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be what your stance is as a fan. Should they be penalized for breaking the rules, or should they not? And I think the best approach is what you said already. It's either all or nothing.
Well, let me take you down this route, Joe, and maybe you can stay with me, or maybe you jump off ship and don't want to be a part of it. But we also know crimes have different levels. A felony has this level. There's multiple different types of levels for a felony. So let's say that Hendrick Motorsports comes into the hearing and says, this is a cause and effect case. The cause was, you promised us that we would receive parts up to spec, and we did not. And the effect is we had to break a rule to not get a competitive advantage or a competitive disadvantage. So if you would have supplied us the correct part, like you promised we would receive, because you took it out of our hands, we would have not committed the crime. Therefore, the penalty is reduced based upon the appeals panel. I, at least, could see that. I could understand that justification, because if NASCAR doesn't, again, it's not really NASCAR. If the manufacturer supplying the parts don't screw this up, Hendrick Motorsports doesn't have a reason to alter the part. So, again, but what we do know is it didn't matter because they dominated. So you have to kind of just put that in your optical, blind spot. But I kind of see it both ways. And I would have more leniency. I really would, Joe, because I understand what Hendrick Motorsports is saying, but I don't like the way that the appeals panel did it. And I think if they were to find a way to come to, because we see that in sports. Guy gets suspended 10 games, MLB knows it's too much. It goes to appeals panel, they make it 4. We shake hands, they never do it again. The fines go to charity, and then we move on with our lives. That's how we do all the other sports. I don't think that I would be, too upset if that's what happened here.
Well, but even with your argument there, so essentially what you're saying, and I think when you got to look at this appeals process, you kind of have to, I envision this being sort of a hearing, a court hearing in a way, right? And so what you're saying essentially is, because they received an already defective part, they had to commit this infraction, right? So basically this single source part caused them to commit the infraction, which, if you're looking in legal terms, I mean, there's something called the fruit of the poisonous tree when you're talking about, committing a crime in society, right? So if evidence is obtained or you're entrapped in some way, and you commit a crime because there was no way out of it, that's just the justification to have your crimes expunged, right? So that even goes back to, if that is the case, and that's the appeals panel's decision as to why that had to be altered, then you go to a nothing approach. You're not guilty of anything, in my opinion. But what they did is essentially, trying to think about this in terms of how I kind of think about it, and maybe it'll help some people out. If a guy gets arrested and charged with murder, and he beats somebody to death, and he gets charged with the murder and the battery, right? For a judge or a jury to say, you're not guilty of the murder, but you're guilty of the battery that killed the man. So we're going to convict you of that. That's essentially what we have here. You're guilty of the crime, but we're not going to give you the most serious penalty that you should get. And I don't like that. I think you're either guilty here of altering a single source part, or there was a reason and justification for it. And if that is the case, then it's a nothing approach. You give everything back. We have a couple comments from Cody. Cody says that this need to not affect the drivers' standings in any way if it didn't affect the race, which I don't disagree with that, but I think this is all in perspective of what we're looking at. Owners' points and fines seem to be the fairest penalty. And then he did say, he's asking, did they say something prior to altering the part, or did they just do it on their own? Seems like an integrity issue too. And Cody, I'll tell you, the issue with the parts not fitting was brought up to NASCAR, and NASCAR specifically told them, we know there's an issue, don't mess with it. So, that's a whole nother issue in itself. I mean, the problem was brought to NASCAR. NASCAR said, yeah, we understand. We're working on it. Don't alter the parts. It's against the rules. And they did it anyway. So I think that thought process or understanding that has to come into play with this penalty as well.
I think, Joe, when it comes to not penalizing the drivers, and again, whether they're innocent of this or not, I truly do believe more often than not, drivers have no idea what's going into their car until they're physically in it and then on the track. We know that now because of all the tech and all the testing and all the things that they do just to get ready beforehand. But at the end of the day, if your mom grounds you from your phone, but never checks your room to see if your phone's there, you're going to keep using your phone. And that's the same penalty when it comes to NASCAR. If NASCAR keeps finding people money and not things that hurt them, the team that is, when it comes to owners' points, when it comes to drivers' points, the things that actually matter and why drivers participate in the sport, then the policing's never going to be enough, at least in my opinion. So again, we knew this was going to be a hot and heavy topic. I guess, Joe, we'll wait next week when Colleague Racing comes out, whenever they have their appeal, and it will be for earmuffs. It will be a shitstorm if Colleague Racing was found to do the same thing, but their penalty is upheld. And that is a type of PR nightmare, Joe, that I don't think NASCAR needs, NASCAR wants, and it would be a headline that only the WWE could come up with and pretty much ruin at least whatever integrity they have.
Now, Ryan, maybe you can give me some insight onto this. Will they indeed have the same appeals panel that Hendrick had?
It's not guaranteed. According to Bob Pockruss, there is no guarantee that they have the same three people that Hendrick did.
And that is a potential for a nightmare, because the different three people could very well see this in a whole different light. So, I mean, you and I are sitting here and we have differing opinions of it.
And I think a lot of people do. But the one thing that Colleague has is precedence. And you know how important that is, Joe, is having precedence before you. So they have that argument that Hendrick never did. So at least they're able to use that. But moving on, there was another penalty as Daniel Suarez bumped into Alex Bowman 3 or 4 times on pit road after trying to take out his teammate to do so. And he was fined $50,000. Joe, we know that pit road is a sacred place when it comes to using your vehicle at any time. And I think that is a harsh penalty for Daniel Suarez, but a warranted one. The last thing you want is to have bystanders, whether it's NASCAR officials, pit crew members, or anybody else, having road rage inside of the pit walls.
I contest that is far more egregious than what we saw Williams do at Atlanta in the Xfinity race.
Yes.
He put nobody in harm. He parked his car on the start finish line under caution, got out and walked back to pit lane or pit road. And there wasn't anything there other than a black eye and a big middle finger to NASCAR, which ticked them off. And that driver got suspended for a week. For Daniel Suarez not to be parked for the next race, I think would have been, and the $50,000 fine probably would have been the appropriate penalty here. So, again, this is NASCAR, I think, being inconsistent. I think if an Xfinity driver did this, I think that they probably would have been parked for the next race. So I think Suarez may be getting a little bit of unfair treatment at that point, because there's no reason that guy's racing this week at Richmond.
I don't disagree with you at all, Joe. I actually believe that same thing when it comes to safety. That is the utmost importance in NASCAR. What if Alex Bowman was halfway out of his car and we don't know that? What if he just took his Honda device off and, he's turning around, next thing you know, he's bang, bang, gets hit in the back. What if his car's in neutral with no steering wheel on? Because we know first thing they do is take the steering wheel off, kind of like when Kyle Busch hit Kevin Harvick. Well, Kevin Harvick was actually trying to inflict harm on him with his fist, but hits his car, and next thing you know, it turns and hits the pit wall. There's all kinds of scenarios there that could have had a very much a terrible outcome that did not. So I agree with you 100%. Parking a car next to the grass on the front stretch is a lot less lethal than
I agree.
hitting somebody on pit road. But the difference being Josh Williams hurt NASCAR's feelings, and this was just NASCAR going, hey, we don't want you to do that anymore. So obviously that's way more egregious than to show up NASCAR and hurt their feelings.
Yeah, and I don't even understand why Suarez was so upset, really. I mean, I just don't. I mean, when you're talking and you look at the entirety of that race, I think that there were drivers way more affected than he was by other people in that race, and they seemed to handle it just fine. We didn't see Kyle Larson decide to go ram Bubba Wallace's car or Hamlin's car. We didn't say that. You didn't even hear from him. So I don't understand. Maybe Daniel Suarez needs to learn how to be a little bit more professional when he doesn't get his way.
Well, here's the funny thing is Alex Bowman actually got out of the car, and this was like, I think I just saw this today, and said, dude, your teammate's the one that hit me. Your teammate's the one that made me wreck. And after hearing that, I think he knew that somewhat, because if you listen to the audio, they're kind of telling him that. I think after that, then you see Suarez go up to Ross Chastain, and that's who had the most words, because Alex Bowman's like, I would have never hit you if you're, as Joe puts it, if I didn't get Chastained, I would have never hit you. So then there, had words as well. And I don't know if you saw this, Joe, but I thought this was great. Granted, it's my favorite driver, and this is one of the reasons I love him. Kyle Busch was having an interview, and Ross Chastain was probably from me to here, this hand, having another interview, and they said, Kyle, we saw a lot of clean racing out there. What do you think? Well, I think we did have some clean racing, except for this guy next to me. This guy don't know how to drive and doesn't know the word of clean racing.
No, I saw that, and I think it's Kyle Busch just doesn't care. He's going to say what's on his mind, and that's why people love him, and that's why people hate him at the same time. I think that's great, and he's absolutely right. You go through and I have been trying to compile, because we actually have we're going to do a little special on here and count down the
let them know, Joe.
Yeah, top 10 NASCAR wrecks of all time in our opinion. And so I've been scouring, and reviewing as many wrecks that come to my mind, and kind of looking at really not only what those wrecks did to alter that race, and possibly seasons for drivers. And Kyle Busch, he's had his fair share of incidents on the track, but you go back and review Ross Chastain race after race after race, and it's unbelievable that guy can even finish a race because, I mean, the amount of damage, just pure, dollar bills that he has caused for other teams, and not to mention points and wins. I'm surprised.
Purses, yeah.
I'm surprised at this point that there aren't teams out there just buying charters to put some random person in to say, "Hey, go wreck Chastain, start of the race."
Right, that's right.
I mean, it's bad.
It's like Don Chaney from Temple going, "I don't want that guy to get another shot off." Well, that guy ended up breaking his arm, and Don Chaney got fired. So,
yeah,
I agree with you 100%. We might be able to do our own show, Joe. Top 10 Ross Chastain force wrecks.
Yeah, no, we could. We might be able to buy our own NASCAR charter with just and get all the funding we need by saying our sole mission is to wreck Ross Chastain.
People would have donated to my GoFundMe.
They would have.
First one it took out of Rick Ware Racing. We could have moved our sights onto Ross Chastain and dropped a freaking hammer on that watermelon head. But unfortunately, we're still waiting for our first payment when it comes to the GoFundMe. And that may never come.
Yeah, I just don't think.
What an interesting year. What an interesting year so far for Daniel Suarez. Rex Kyle Busch, not once, twice, screws him out of the Daytona 500, and then finds his way getting a $50,000 fine. He just got married. He's supposed to be happy.
Well, that's his problem.
Be living. Oh, I don't have my yellow flag, but
no. I think Track Alley Racing. I think that they're going to do good things, and they can do good things, but I think that there must be an atmosphere and an attitude that they're just going to run people over. So
if they want to win championships, something's going to have to change very soon, because they're not going to let them. The other drivers will not let them win championships if they keep driving this way.
No, you're absolutely right.
But I want to move on to Josh Williams now, Joe. I don't know if you saw this, and I may be able to put this up after I tell you about it, but Josh Williams got a new sponsor. Did you see that the new sponsor that Josh Williams received? I think he announced it today.
I did. Is this for real, or is this a joke?
This is not a joke. and I want you to see this. Okay, so you're seeing this live with everybody else. He got a sponsor that has the technology to help people park their vehicles.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. Josh Williams returns from a one-race suspension after parking his number 92 Chevy at Atlanta. Now, he and DGM Racing have secured a fitting primary partner. According to a press release, Parking Guidance Systems will support both Williams and teammate Alex LeBay, the company which provides technology-driven parking management solutions for parking structures. Will kick off this deal with LeBay at Richmond. The company will ultimately work with both drivers during several races on the Xfinity schedule.
Well, you know what they say. Yeah, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And you know what? At the end of the day, NASCAR got their feelings hurt. They overreacted, but as karma usually works out, good things are coming for Josh Williams. So good for him. And he's actually probably my new favorite driver, at least in the Xfinity series.
Let's put it this way. He's been on Dale Jr. Download. He has been on NASCAR Weekly. He has sold T-shirts and now has a new sponsor. That $50,000 fine that Denny Hamlin said he would pay, he's probably actually going, well, now I want interest. I mean,
yeah,
more money now, not being in that car.
Yeah. He definitely has the money to pay that fine now.
So I thought that was a great story. When I saw that, the first thing I did, Joe, I was like, that can't be real. That can't be real. And then I read it. I'm like, holy cow, it is real. And they showed the car and everything. Parked in a parking garage.
That's good. That's good stuff. I'm happy. I'm happy for him.
Well, let's move on now to what we're expecting this weekend at Richmond. It is on Sunday at 3:00. The 0.75 mile track, Joe, has not been a bastion of great auto racing, at least in terms of competitiveness. It is an older track. Tires will most certainly be a factor. Fuel will most certainly be a factor. I actually like Richmond Raceway. You know, they got the first 1 and 2 turn. It's kind of wide. You can drive right in. Turns 3 and 4, pretty, tight. Pretty much only got to run the bottom on that. We saw what could have been a fuel race at COTA before all hell broke loose and we had 40,000 green, white checkers. What is your expectations for Richmond this weekend?
Well, Richmond's one of these short tracks that are kind of unlike any other when you talk about Martinsville or Bristol, because the reason why tire wear is always an issue on a short track, just because of the speed that you get up to on the straightaways coming into the turns and trying to make those turns. But Richmond has long straightaways for a short track, and that's what makes it so unique. So these cars are able to get up to great, I think what do they get up to, about 125 miles an hour,
a little bit more than that, because
yeah.
It's 0.75 miles. Yeah,
you're right. So and then you have really hard braking coming into turn 1 and turn 3. So tires get absolutely chewed up at Richmond, and we'll see that this year, and we'll see if Goodyear really is that much better this year, because Richmond and Martinsville both had serious tire issues last year, if you remember. So and then you're absolutely right. Richmond always comes down to kind of a strategy race as well, and I would say that Richmond is one of those races, especially a short track race, that it can be exciting, but sometimes casual fans of NASCAR just aren't into it that much, because they're not seeing those high speed wrecks and those sliding into the wall and really great passing, because this is a strategy race as well. So fuel strategy is gonna be the utmost importance here. So that kind of was negated a little bit when they went to stage racing with Richmond, because you have those built-in brakes. But still, I think just a couple of years ago we saw, or was it last year, we saw somebody run out of gas. 2 years ago
we did last year, actually.
Yeah,
we saw
okay.
a couple drivers run out of gas. Yes.
So I'm excited to watch it. I mean, obviously, I'm not always there for the wrecks. I like watching the race. I like seeing drivers make chicken salad out of chicken shit sometimes, and be able to pass. And it's nothing more exciting than seeing a pass on a track you're not supposed to be able to pass on. So that's what I expect to see. I also think that we're going to get another look at the aero package, but I really don't think. I think it played out well for the road course at COTA. I just still don't think that more downforce or whatever they're doing with the aero package.
Less downforce.
Yeah. I don't think that it's going to have that much effect on short tracks, because I just don't feel the way that these cars are built, that the speed that they get up to, it's going to have much of effect. I still think that they're going to have enough control over their car at the speeds that they're at, that it's just not going to be an issue.
One thing that I'm actually looking forward to, Joe, when it comes to the new aero package, is that this is a track different. It's an older race, surface. So that's going to play a hand. A lot of the drivers said they didn't think it'd help at Phoenix, and they also weren't expecting the PJ1. Richmond has never used PJ1, so you don't have to worry about that. So I think it might a little bit. I think we'll probably see the most bumping that we've seen in a while. And I can only hope, because that's what makes short tracks great, was the bump and run.
Right.
And I think if drivers can close, and we saw that at the road course, that drivers could close, I think that we'll have a great racetrack. Again, though, it is a little bit more technical. My biggest thing is usually the best strategy and the best crew chiefs come out on top when it comes to Richmond. Go into this race with a different mindset. There might be a driver that has the best car, but is there a pit crew chief and team that have the best race? This track and this race will be won by either the guy on top of pit stand or by the people changing the tires. It usually comes down to those type of two things, and you have to take it that way. You're right. It's not Talladega. It's not going to be Bristol. Take it from a technical standpoint. There's going to be number crunching nonstop. And I usually enjoy that type of racing as well, because it is a little bit different than what we're typically used to.
Yeah. No,
Did you have a question at Command Center 1? I saw you looking there.
No. Find the Doggo said, I made it. What I miss. He's going to have to go back.
Show. Congratulations, Zach. You missed the show.
You're going to have to go back and watch, I guess.
So, yeah. So, again, we are now to our picks. I had just a monumental week last week. Joe was 4 points ahead. I am now 1 point ahead. One of our best. I mean, you got 4 points, which is nothing to sneeze at. It's pretty good. But I was able to come out on top. I now have a 1 point lead. And Joe, with my 1 point lead, I don't know what to do with it. I've never been in this situation.
Never.
So I am actually going to defer to you when it comes to our picks. We're currently at 27 and 26 points right now as we stand.
Well, I think that, and really, if you take a look last year at our points, this really probably isn't a track that either one of us are going to gain much ground on each other, only because at the end of the day, usually we do pretty well on short tracks because you know what to expect. And, your explanation of, this being a technical track and pit crews having to do their job and also drivers knowing what to do is going to play a large part in this. So the drivers that I'm going to pick, as you know, I always like past winners. So they play a huge role for me because if you could win at a track, you could do it again. So my first pick this week is going to be Kevin Harvick. And I'm going to stay along those lines with veterans this week, other than one. I'm also going to go with Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, well, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to go with Martin Truex. And I hate that I cannot believe I'm doing this for my final pick. I'm going to go with Alex Bowman. If you notice, there's a driver that I neglected this week, and I think for the first time in my history.
Well, I think by the rules, Joe, you didn't choose somebody below 20th in points.
Oh, we're still doing that?
We were. Yeah, I think we still were.
Okay. Well,
hold on. Do you want me to check? We can start the 20 points.
No.
For the NASCAR standings right now, if you want.
No. Then alleviate Martin Truex and give me Brad Keselowski.
Okay. Well, here's how we can do this. Because we're going to have one different driver apiece. So, actually, yes, that's exactly what it is going to be. Hold on. So I'm going to pull up the standings real quick after I quit clicking on a bunch of different stuff. And you can tell me, because we were going to get to the point to where we are 25% through the season and we take people below the 20th position moving forward. And we can wait on that. What race are we on? Do you know?
What is this? The 6th race?
It's either the 6th or 7th. So
Yeah.
We're getting close. There's 36 races. We'll wait. We'll just keep doing what we've been doing. And
you can take Martin Truex off for me. I'll take Keselowski this week. I think it's been several years ago, but for whatever reason, I think Keselowski won here 9 or 10 years ago. So
he actually does pretty good at this track.
So yeah.
So my first pick will be Brad Keselowski. My next pick will be Kyle Busch. My next pick will be Denny Hamlin, and my next pick will be Kevin Harvick. Those are the 4 drivers that we have the same. The battle will come down to this. You have Alex Bowman, the #1 points leader as of right now in terms of driver points. I am going to go with my second favorite driver, and Toyota has typically dominated here, and that's why I'm continuing to go that route, and I'm choosing Christopher Bell. So Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, that is really the only fight we care about this week because that is the differential that we have. And unfortunately, we've been doing this for a while now, Joe. We have our thought processes. We go through this, and the #1 thing we don't do is tell each other who our picks are because we want this to be as organic as possible. Oh, my God. What's going on? Just tell me.
But by the doggo, apparently he didn't catch it or the start of the show because he fell asleep. But then he told me to pick Bowman, and I didn't see that comment. And then when I picked Bowman, he said crowd erupts. And then he said Ryan is such a homer, which I agree with.
I think that I've got so much shit last time we've done these shows before for not picking Kyle Busch. So I don't know. I mean, granted, last year it worked out pretty good. This year, it's been a little bit better. And maybe he just likes my background. You know what? Hell with you, Zach. Go back to sleep. You're going to be negative.
No, I think he's providing great content.
Yeah, I think he was actually going to upset that you didn't pick Eric Almirola. Or Bubba Wallace. The people that ruined Kyle Larson.
Oh, I thought he got replaced this week. Didn't he say he needed to be replaced?
He did not get replaced.
Oh.
So Michael Jordan did not fulfill his wishes. But Joe, do you have anything else before we close today's weekly show?
Nope. I'm excited for the race this Sunday.
I can't wait as well. And Joe, you mentioned it. We know a lot about these races. And more importantly, we know how to make you money because what we know.
Right.
Yeah. Not to toot our own horn, but literally this past week, I gave you a lineup that was 35th out of 8,000 people. If you decided to use it, Joe gave you the win on his betting picks. He also gave you a couple top 5 drivers. If you want
I made money. And if you would have listened to me, you would have made money too.
You would have listened to this side, you would have made more money as well. And we've been doing that. We have made money except 1 week. So out of the 6 weeks so far that we have had NASCAR races, there's just 1 week. Neither one of us made money. Not guaranteeing you that that's always going to be that way because we are on a little bit of a hot streak. But you will get very much informed advice when it comes to putting your dollar into a safe bet because, again, we're doing the research for you. We've been watching NASCAR, Joe, for 20-something odd years. And we are not surprised when X driver wins X race.
No. And to be fair, last week, Vegas told you who was going to win too.
That's actually a very good point. So, tune in for that. We will have the betting show. If you want to go back and look at all of our other videos we have, you feel free to do that. If you like this live stream or if you're just now catching it after it's live because you fell asleep like Zach, you can like and subscribe for what you hear on this weekly show this week. Hopefully YouTube is bringing it out to you. Make sure you hit the bell icon. We know notifications don't work anyway because it's YouTube, but you might have to search for our shows here temporarily. It seems like we have been blacklisted somewhat, but we will fight through. We know our content is great. We know more importantly that you love our content because the subscriptions just keep rising.
Well, and so we're going to try something maybe as well. If try to up our ratings a little bit. I'm thinking that our next show we're going to do from our bedrooms, and we're going to kind of point the camera right up at our face and just give you all the knowledge that we have. We're thinking maybe that'll help out in some way.
I thought we were going to show our feet.
Yeah, we might do that as well. I hear there's a big market for that. No, seriously though, if you're watching us for the first time and you've made it this far, like and subscribe. It really is going to help us get this information out to more people. We like making money betting on NASCAR. We love talking NASCAR, and by the sheer amount of people that we see at races when we go, we know there's a whole lot of you too that like doing the same thing. So we want to make you a part of this channel. We want to, we want your feedback. We want your comments. So any subscribers, any comments, any feedback you give us, we appreciate.
Absolutely right. And a couple last things before we sign off here. Make sure you give us your picks. Again, we'll always put your picks out there. If you give us your picks in the comments below and see how you fare against us. If we make you some money and you want to donate back to this is a completely independent production. We are not paid by anybody. We do this all on our own. We have a Patreon that, you're feel free to subscribe to if you would like to. And for this race, no sponsors. NASCAR Premium has a 7-day trial. It would be great to listen on your phone to what's going to happen on pit road this week. I highly, highly recommend that. And if you're in the Richmond area, you can get into the race this weekend for $30 with your fees. I mean, why not? It's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. So, find yourself in Richmond or in that general area. $30 is nothing to get into a NASCAR race to have a wonderful day of fun.
No.
Outside of that, all things good must come to an end, like Kentucky Speedway. This show is over. We'll see you next time.